Hello, and welcome back to the Week in Nintendo right here on GVG. I'm your host this week, Steve Bowling, as usual. But what isn't usual is that I'm actually joined by not one, but two co-hosts. I have both Jon and Daniel with me this week to talk about one of our favorite consoles from Nintendo. Kind of weird to say that in this retrospect. The Wii turned 19, but no, we're not talking about that. We're going to be talking about the Gamecube. That's going to be the majority of this episode. But before I get into all of that, Jon, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. I'm dandy. I love talking about that little box, and I've had a good damn time in the last few weeks. Played through all of Hyrule Warriors. Fantastic game. I didn't think I'd be in the mood for it either, because I thought I was satiated after Age of Calamity. Very, very similar premise. And I thought I was kind of done with this world of Hyrule. But I still had a brilliant time just playing through it again. I think part of that's just, it's nice playing a high-fidelity Hyrule Warriors again. Because we haven't really had that since the first game, the definitive version. So that was great. Kirby launch day? We're just flooded in games right now. And you and I, Steve, have also been playing Yakuza Kiwami. There's too many things. People got to stop playing, making games.
Yeah, Yakuza Kiwami, I had a lot of fun with. I've not even touched 2. I've been in 1.
Yes.
Yeah, it's too much game. Like, I agree with you that there's just so much coming out right now. As we're recording this, Daniel just put his Kirby Air Riders video live.
Mm-hmm.
So he has clearly been busy with that. We also got Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider came out just out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird version, because when you compare them side by side, this is the last gen, like the last gen version, 360 PS3. But it's a 60 FPS. It's got mouse controls. But all you really miss is the new Lara model and a few new effects. And I think it's okay. They clearly ported it to Switch 1 and then said, like, what else can we do to make this on Switch 2? But when you're playing, it's really nice to have mouse controls, and it's cool going back and forth, because for platforming, you want split Joy-Con. But when you want to start aiming, it's nice just to put the mouse down and start having that precision aiming. So that's rad. So maybe not the definitive version, but it's a really cool version.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really like it. Jumping back to Kiwami for one sec, did you notice that it was pretty similar to like Yakuza 0? Like, I noticed it, ever since you mentioned it back when the Switch 2 launched, I look at those title cards for chapters.
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
It's still got that same really blurry title card setup.
Yeah, I think they're like 1080p. It's 60 FPS, which is cool. And that was the main thing that stopped me from buying Kiwami on Switch 1, because I've wanted to catch up with Yakuza for a long time. But finding the time to do that is really difficult. So I thought, on a handheld, this is the prime opportunity. And now we've got 0, 1, and 2. I'm still trying to find the time to catch up, but this feels like the time to do it. But yeah, you're right. It's not. They probably could have done even better with this version.
Yeah, I'm not super disappointed. It's still really cool seeing, Kamurocho in the palm of my hand. Like this feels like I kind of mentally split Switch 2 games into categories, like ones that are meant to be played docked and ones that are definitely meant to make handheld mode shine. And I feel like these Yakuza games are designed for handheld mode.
And we're going to get all of them. Like, we're going to get 3, we're going to get 4, we're going to get 5. We're going to get every single Yakuza just over the next probably the next year. Every few months, we'll probably get a new Yakuza on the Switch.
Yeah, I'm not mad about it. I think that it would be exciting to have this. Like, the same way that at some point in the Switch 1 history, like, we had most of Final Fantasy in the library. Yeah. I'd love to be able to say that about Yakuza, too.
It's cool. It's very cool.
Yeah. Also cool is that Daniel has been absolutely grinding away on Kirby Air Riders.
Crazy man.
Since that came out hours ago, as of the recording of this. Daniel, I know what you've been up to for the last like 6-ish hours, but what have you been up to since the last time we chatted?
No, I've also been playing a lot of the. I tried to finish Hyrule Warriors as well. I just kind of shot towards the end as of a couple days ago, so I can have time to focus on Kirby Air Riders after the fact. And as Jon said, really enjoyed the game. I didn't really think I would be invested in this era of Hyrule as well, but it's so interesting to see another Zelda game that's focusing more on Zelda and not Link himself. It's been really her time lately, especially with Echoes of Wisdom and now Age of Imprisonment. I had a lot of fun with those, and I guess I've grown to learn that I just really enjoy the Muso style of gameplay because the Switch has had a lot of them, from 2 Fire Emblems, 3 different Legend of Zeldas, the Persona 5 Strikers. Like I got spoiled with Muso games during the Switch era for sure, and I love seeing how they kind of shifted from being a typical Warriors game, like the first Hyrule Warriors in Fire Emblem, to being just like an extension of that exact series that we've seen with Persona and Age of Imprisonment and 3 Hopes with Fire Emblem. It's been really fascinating to see all that. But yeah, I pretty much spend my rest of my time for that. I might dabble with it every now and then because there's a lot of stuff to complete with it, but every Musou game, every Warriors game takes forever to do everything with. So right now I'm focusing on Kirby Air Riders, the checklist, which is going to steadily be getting filled out. That demo really puts in perspective. I don't think that was a really well thought out demo because when you throw everyone into city trial, everyone gets kind of scared and intimidated because of how frantic and crazy everything is. And when you just have like Air Riders and even Top Ride, if they had like the road trip mode, if they had like a little sample of road trip, which kind of gives you a little taste of everything, not a full course, but just a taste, I think that would be a lot more palatable to people to get, acclimated with the game. But yeah, I'm hoping people still give it a chance.
It's always been such a funny game because you look back at the original and I think it's got like a 60 on Metacritic. But despite that, as a very loyal fan base, it's just one of those games that doesn't click with some people, but for others, it's like their favorite game. And you've got to respect that. Like, not every game is for everyone, but I love when something like that can just land with a certain crowd.
Yeah.
It's
go
been it's just been a wild time to see these kind of games come back and to see how it literally is a GameCube game in the purest form, just coming out here in this era. Like, there's no DLC coming out with it. It's just a fully complete packaged title. And it pretty much just focuses on becoming a sequel to that game, not just like doing nothing that's too iterative or that changes the gameplay very much. So it kind of caters more to, I mentioned this in another video, it caters a lot more to the fans that were with the series beforehand than newcomers. It's a little bit less welcoming to the newcomers, actually. It's been interesting to watch. When the demo was out, I showed a friend how to do city trial and just kind of introduce it to her, and it was a little scary, but she was still able to kind of acclimate a little bit. And it was fun to show someone new city trial. One of those games where it's best to have someone show you the ropes than to just fling you out there to the wolves.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept. Like, I'll be picking up a copy later today because we're recording this crazy early in the morning. So stores aren't open here yet, but I'll be going out and grabbing one. I was curious, Daniel, as a huge fan of the game, did you end up buying any of the amiibo that are coming out today?
Not yet. I want for the fact that Kirby Air Riders even has amiibo is crazy. Like, I want to get at least one just to kind of have. If I, against my better judgment, I might get more in the future. Depends on what kind of characters or get released. But $50 for each one is a lot. They're huge. You can swap them around. Like, I understand why it's a bit more pricey, especially in this economy right now. But it's a lot to invest. I don't want to go through another Smash Brothers thingy where I collect everyone again.
Yeah, my wallet's hurting a little bit after my recent amiibo purchases. Like, I got the Samus on the motorcycle and the other
too.
like Metroid Prime 4 Samus, and I thought about getting the Kirby Air Riders amiibo. And I don't mean this as a knock against the game, but in a weird way, I find those more interesting than the game itself. Just because I'm curious about the technology behind having the swappable riders on the amiibos. There's like a 6-pin connector to those. Like, the dork in me wants to get one and disassemble it and find out how they did that.
Yeah, I was looking at what they cost in the UK. They're £33, which is like £3 more than the Skyward Sword Zelda amiibo. So it's definitely tariffs that have hit America because it's expensive for an amiibo, but it's not like crazy. Yeah,
I looked at buying all 3 amiibo in the game, and I was like, that's $200.
No,
I was like, I can't
nuts.
do that. So I'll probably get the game and amiibo just to kind of see how they fit together. I don't know that my wallet can suffer more than one of them. But anyway, I feel like there's so much going on with the Switch right now, but we don't want to talk only about stuff you've already heard about on the Weekend Nintendo. We want to take this in a different direction. And so today we're going to look at the launch of probably one of Nintendo's least successful systems, the GameCube. And I thought that this would be a particularly interesting panel because we have a variety of ages here. I am an ancient human being, and so I was actually an adult when the GameCube came out and bought one with money from work, which is depressing to say out loud on the internet. John, you were just really little, right? You were like 5 or 6 when the console
it launched in
released.
2002 in Europe, a year after America. So I would have been 7.
Wow.
How does that make you feel?
No, I wish it didn't.
It makes me feel like I will soon be unable to feel. And Daniel, you're kind of in the middle between us. You were what, like maybe 12 or so when the GameCube dropped?
Yeah, it came out right around my birthday. And no, I didn't get it for my birthday. Actually, no, I got it for Christmas. I remember this very specifically because under my tree, there was a very specific cube-shaped box. And I remember I got like a thumbtack and I etched just a corner of it just to see. And I could see a barcode that was like, this has to be the GameCube. It can't be anything else. And then I flipped it over so they didn't see. That was, sorry, Mom and Dad, if you ever watched this, but I did cheat a little. But yeah. Right there, I was like, I had just turned 12, and I had Melee and Luigi's Mansion with me on Christmas, and that was like the best thing ever.
That's such a funny thing because by the time the GameCube released, I was selling consoles to people, in a job at Target, and during my era, like when I was young enough to get consoles for Christmas, they didn't really track much about consoles. Like they didn't track serial numbers the way they do these days. Like if you buy a console at a store, they'll like scan the barcode and then they have that little window for the serial number that's cut out of the box. And I remember thinking like every kid's going to know what they got for Christmas because they could just like put their fingers around the box and feel for the serial number hole, and then they'd be like, I got a video game console. I don't know if kids did that, but it's something I imagined like every little kid did around Christmas was like, because I know I used to like shake my presents and do stuff like you, Daniel, to try to figure out what it was.
Yeah.
This is related to the competition, but my friend got a PS2 for Christmas. And he always tells this horrific story where his mum put the PS2 game discs on the Christmas tree like ornaments. So she's taken it out of the case and like put the hole through the branches of the Christmas tree. And he always tells the story in like a very fun way, and I'm horrified. That's gonna kill the discs.
Yeah, that would make my skin crawl, to be honest. I'd be like, why are you? Don't do that. Also, it just feels strange. Like as a parent, I wouldn't want to make it that obvious what my kid got for Christmas. But we're here to talk about the GameCube, another disc-based system. And I'm really curious to hear from you guys because for me, the lead up to the GameCube was almost as exciting as the launch of it itself. Because we kind of lived in this era where, though the internet was nascent, we were starting to get a version of what all of us are doing right now. Where gaming outlets shifted largely from doing, text-based stories to actually delivering video coverage. And I remember being online as a kid in the late 90s, early 2000s, watching, IGN posting videos of the GameCube, from like Space World and from E3, watching coverage that like, it wasn't what we have today. They weren't like direct feed capturing, but they'd send someone out with a shaky hand and a camcorder to record Star Fox Adventures off of a giant screen. And that was how we got video game coverage back in the day. I imagine that you guys probably have seen these, but like with the benefit of like many years having passed by.
I do remember signing up to IGN's premium service because that was the only way you can get videos from them at a certain point. I forget what it was called, like
IGN Insider.
That was it, yeah. That was like right before YouTube was a thing. You used to have to subscribe to them to get videos.
Yeah, I was an IGN insider.
Yeah.
And I remember fighting the good fight for the GameCube in their message boards. But yeah, they used to paywall their videos, and they were objectively by modern standards, especially, just awful videos, right? Like they were people complain about lighting and microphones and everything these days. IGN would show up with like a digital camera that maybe did 480i on a good day, and the world's worst microphone, and talk to like, Nintendo executives of the era, like Perrin Kaplan and stuff. And sometimes they seemed visibly drunk, but they would be sitting on the floor at E3 talking about their new games. And I just remember being so obsessed with the GameCube in the lead up to its launch. Like, Nintendo had done nothing to earn my goodwill with the N64. But just knowing that they were like moving to discs, and it was going to be this small console, and it was purple, and it had a handle, and it was so weird, was something that I found so incredibly exciting for some reason. I just couldn't wait to see what Nintendo was going to do with this, because this was back in the era when they were still trying to compete in terms of power. Like, they were trying to match PlayStation and Xbox, and in a way, I do miss that.
They exceeded PlayStation 2 in a lot of ways. Like, PS2 has the emotion engine, so its fill rate can be a lot higher. But in terms of like pure graphical fidelity, like, very few PS2 games look like Resident Evil 4. Even Resident Evil 4 on PS2 doesn't look like Resident Evil 4. Metroid Prime was way ahead of PS2. They really did really outstanding stuff. But it's interesting, both because I was younger and also because I was in the UK. There wasn't much of a Nintendo field there. So a lot of magazines were about the PS2 or the Xbox. And then there was the Nintendo magazine, but the general population wasn't really gravitating to GameCube. And back at school, I only knew one friend who had one. Everyone else had a PS2 or an Xbox, mostly PS2. But yeah, there was very little GameCube love then.
Oh man, yeah. In my circle, we had a lot of people that they were mostly for PlayStation. They had a PS1, PS2, but I had accumulated a circle of friends that we did play GameCube titles like after school and whatnot, and we would play every now and then. I was the only friend among them that had the Nintendo Power magazine. That was my only real like intake for Nintendo news. I didn't have IGN. I was always Nintendo Power, and so that's how I learned mostly about everything, like their preview coverage, everything that they had for E3 and whatnot. Like, that's all we had. We had that and the 480i video coverage that we had way back in the day. Like, I absorbed everything that I could for that way back then. I still remember the exact the cover for that when Melee came out, like with Mario with his pose, his trophy pose, and everyone was like super excited for this game to come out, because even when I still remember watching the footage for when Melee was introduced. Like, everyone was super excited because it was just that intro that showed all the Nintendo characters, and it was just such a cool way to, like,
there's one guy freaking out over Ice Climbers. You can hear him in the crowd.
The one man.
Ice Climbers is in this? No one else is anything.
The biggest Ice Climber fan to this day was showing off there. Yeah, it was such a cool time.
Yeah. And the graphical jump as well. Like, PS2 had already happened. But you compare Ocarina of Time to Twilight Princess, or Smash Brothers to Smash Brothers Melee, and we've never had a jump that big before. And the fidelity of all these games, there's a lot of 60 frames per second GameCube games, and we got that even at launch. Like, Monkey Ball is such a smooth game in every single one of its modes, and it's never really been as smooth as it was on GameCube. Like, they've done lots of new Monkey Balls since then, but there's always some kind of caveat. Whether it's the physics, but the performance as well. Like, a Banana Rumble plays pretty well in the single player, atrocious in multiplayer. GameCube had that nailed on its first day, and it's still such a delightful feeling game to play now.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk about the launch of the GameCube, because I experienced the Japanese launch. I imported it. I just knew I was going to want it day one. And they launched in Japan with only 3 games. We had Luigi's Mansion, Wave Race, and Super Monkey Ball. And honestly, though, what a banger lineup. Like, those are 3 incredible games, like generational excellence. But at the time, they were received rather poorly, like as a launch lineup for a new Nintendo console.
Luigi, like, especially. Luigi had a lot of flack.
Luigi got done dirty. in the GameCube launch because
Yeah.
he wasn't Mario. And I don't think a lot of people appreciated not just that it was an excellent game in its own right, but just how impressive it was for its era from a technical perspective. Like the cloth physics in Nintendo loved showing off Luigi pulling a sheet off of a mirror. And it made sense because you didn't really see stuff like that in games back then.
The transparencies too, like all the ghosts were transparent, and there wasn't really loading. Like you just sort of went from area to area. It was all very, very smooth. But it was also a very short game. And so my one friend who had a GameCube actually had buyer's remorse and traded in Luigi's Mansion, like after playing it, because he finished it in 4 hours and thought, well, that was a waste of money. But these days you don't really see it that way because you have the games already. They're on NSO. You can just play through them, and there's no question of value really. But you can just sort of appreciate games for what they are. But back then, I think every purchase kind of had that big weight to it. And so sometimes there is that remorse with launch games.
Yeah, I think especially today when we have a lot of titles that kind of feel a bit samey, like people are just doing the same thing released over and over again. We appreciate titles like Luigi's Mansion that did something completely different and that it's not a 20, 30 plus hour game. You can get through it really quickly. And I wish we had more games like that nowadays because there's no time to play all these lately. But but from a technical perspective, as you mentioned, it's just so impressive to see that game, the GameCube launch with that kind of title. Really playing with lighting, with expressions. Like Luigi had all the craziest expressions that you would never see on Mario. Just the fact that this was like a tech demo at first, and then they're like, we're going to turn this into a full game and shove Luigi in it. And unfortunately, that wasn't the best for him at first. But I'm glad a lot of people have turned around on Luigi's Mansion as a whole series at this point.
We really see that Nintendo in the GameCube era was kind of laying the groundwork for the Wii in an interesting way because they were starting to experiment with kind of the formula for success for a console. They, instead of putting Mario out on day one, they put out Luigi. Instead of a more traditional Mario platformer, we get Sunshine. Nintendo was clearly trying to tinker with their winning formula and trying to see if there was a different way to go about things. And I think without the GameCube, you really wouldn't get kind of the craziness that was the Wii era of Nintendo.
They'd already established a lot of what 3D game design was on the N64. And this is a problem that Zelda kind of faced for a while. Because after Ocarina of Time, they had fantastic Zeldas, but they never really innovated again in the same way until Breath of the Wild. So Wind Waker, it still plays like Ocarina, but they really shaped up the setting and the traversal. Everything about the pillars of Zelda was different, but the core was the same. I think that's what Steve was saying there. They kind of shook things up. Like Star Fox as well. They took Dinosaur Planet and put Fox in, but even core Star Fox with Assault was very different to 64. So they're trying to bring all these core identities that they already formed, but mix them up in a way to make them interesting again, which they did very successfully, but it kind of came at the cost of losing that traditional Nintendo design. So there's very few traditional Nintendo games on the GameCube when you look at it as a whole. I think Metroid Prime is probably the best candidate, but that was also a huge innovator.
Which is when you see Metroid Prime, when that's just when we take the side-scrolling Metroidvania, turn it to a first-person, essentially, just shifting that completely. I love the GameCube's entire library for just innovating so many different kind of series that are known for other standard styles of gameplay, like with Metroid. Luigi's Mansion, obviously, they turned This was Fire Emblem's very first time in 3D. Kirby, of course, had Air Ride. Who would expect a racer for this generation too? So many of Nintendo's core franchises, like they had a weird, innovative look to it, and it was the birth of new ones like Pikmin as well, which is still Nintendo's weirdest little RTS that I love.
Yeah, we always praise the GameCube controller. And it deserves it in many ways, but there's a lot of games that controller just doesn't really work for. Like Time Splitters, I'd much rather play that with the big joysticks of an Xbox or a PS2. But you look at Melee, you look at Pikmin, those games are so tailor-made for that controller. So every Nintendo game just felt amazing with that thing, and it's still the default for Smash. It's such a comfortable controller, but it's not really a jack of all trades kind of controller, though.
No, it really was ideal for games that were designed for Nintendo's hardware from the ground up. It's really hard to really think of a better controller as long as the developers had it in mind.
Yeah.
Where it's an interesting situation where I think that Nintendo made, and again, this was kind of the start of something a bit, where Nintendo was focusing more on their innovation than they were necessarily on just the raw power of their hardware. We got the analog triggers, we got this weird button layout with like kidney bean shaped buttons. And when you did play a game that obviously was set up for that controller, it's like the controller just completely got out of the way. It was so easy to remember what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like Mario Sunshine, playing that with the controller is wonderful because you've got the big A button for jump, your secondary button B, and then X and Y. They're just they're the most secondary buttons you can have, just changing Flood's abilities. It was a perfect layout for that. You've got the analog triggers to shoot Flood. That was just pure perfection. But then you get games like, I don't know, like Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. It's fine on the GameCube, but I think I'd rather play that with full-on big dual sticks.
Yeah, the C stick in particular was not great for games that heavily leaned on the use of a second stick because it just was too nubby that it was it got in the way to a degree because if you were trying to make fine movements with that, you would not have a great time.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely one of the things that would hinder a game like Metroid Prime and Prime 2 was just that the C-Stick was just designated to change your beams instead, and you have to just function with the control stick. I don't know. I feel like I still kind of adapted to it because my first time doing first-person shooters, I guess I just kind of learned as I went. But when I started to play like the Metroid Prime trilogy with the Wii remote and that kind of pointer, like everything just opened up for me. And I still can't find what is the most comfortable way to play this on remastered on Switch. Like there's like 4 different control schemes. I can't quite find the one that fits the best for me because I'm just so used to the GameCube controller. It really was just those first party Nintendo games in particular. A lot of them were just built with this in mind and not really optimized for other control schemes, as we've seen with other re-releases of games that have come even up into the Switch era.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I find that single stick controls are actually really good for newcomers. It's like GoldenEye and Metroid Prime. If you're not used to dual sticks, it's actually really easy. I've had people just pick up GoldenEye and they can get it immediately. Whereas dual stick games, they flail around a lot. So in that formative time of figuring out what a first-person game is, I think the control scheme for Metroid Prime made sense then.
I could agree with you on that. I think what I find interesting about this is I really enjoyed my time with Metroid Prime. Going back to it now, I can't imagine wanting to play any version other than, the Wii re-release, because I think the pointer controls are just dramatically better.
They are very good, yeah.
But I, again, as someone who was an adult in this era, I had played many first-person shooters before Metroid Prime, primarily on my dad's PC with a mouse. And I remember finding it difficult to use dual stick controls for quite a while, having come from playing Doom 2 and Quake on my dad's PC.
Yeah.
You guys, however, you likely had the opportunity for dual stick controls to be your very first look at an FPS. Is that true for either of you? And how did that kind of impact your ability to play these GameCube twin stick shooters?
I think it's true for me. I think my first FPS was a Medal of Honor game. I think on the GameCube. I think I played it on my friend's GameCube. And I remember struggling a lot. So playing multiplayer together. He had the grip of it. It's his game. He grasped it. I think I spent the whole time barely being able to look around. I struggled big time.
Interesting. How about you, Daniel? Is Metroid Prime like your first FPS or?
Oh yeah, that was the first one that I ever introduced myself to. I don't think I would have ever even gotten to the series had it not been bundled with another GameCube, because I think something bad happened to my first one and it couldn't redisc anymore, and so I got a platinum one that also came with the Metroid Prime bundle, and that's how I was introduced to that title. I was interested in Samus from Smash Brothers. I had never really played any of those games because I got into games with N64. There was no Metroid game on N64. So by GameCube, I was like, oh, I should probably try and just see if I enjoyed this character's world. And it was my introduction to just anything first-person shootery. And when I finally played a game that actually was with dual sticks, I was like, it was just a big difference back and forth going between the two, for sure.
Mm.
It's funny you mentioned the Platinum GameCube, because I specifically remember, obviously, when the GameCube launched, in Japan in particular, it was just the iconic purple color, and also what they called spice, but it was really just orange, and then black. They had those 3 colorways on day one. I got purple because I was like, oh, well, that's the one. A few months after the American launch, or maybe even a year later, Nintendo launched the GameCube in Platinum, which was one of the, what was it, like 6 Space World colors they showed off?
Yeah.
And I had desperately wanted that one at the time. Like in the early 2000s, silver was it, like that was the color for everything. And I sent off my GameCube to be painted. And
what?
So I have a silver painted purple GameCube, and cool. I regret it more than anything. Like when I look at my GameCube, I'm like, I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I'll post a picture of it on our Bluesky or our Twitter or something, but it's like got a blue LED now, because that was cool too. And it's got this big honking like dip switch on the side, so I can play American games on it, because it was a Japanese GameCube. It was like gaming's version of Frosted Tips. I sent it in to get painted silver, and I feel so bad for it. Like if you look on the underside of the little fins on the side of my GameCube, they're still purple.
Oh my gosh, I have my Platinum one. I also, it's Platinum, but they had these decals to put onto it that has like, it looks like an edited version of the Smash Brothers Melee. Like that key art that has everyone standing in a line. I could probably just unwire it right now, because I just have it literally right here. Which is a little bit scary, because I have all this.
How easily can you do this without just breaking everything?
I'm not gonna lie. I thought Daniel was gonna say he got the tribal GVA or something like that.
Oh my god! No, it's this one with all of this stuff on it. So it's got like all these weird. It's Melee's key art, but you can tell that some characters were edited in, or like there's like a random Wario in there as well on the side. But
Wario's just chilling there, isn't he?
Pretty much. He thinks he's part of the crew right now when he really isn't. But yeah, it's just this one, and of course it has the Game Boy player, which I also want to talk about. I love that's
a huge part of it. Yeah,
the Game Boy player, which it gave a lot of life to a lot of the games that I would otherwise probably not have played. Yeah. And some Game Boy games, especially, were highlighting it. Like when you start up Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, it would show Game Boy player on the splash screen, because they really wanted to encourage you playing that on the big screen, which I did a whole lot for a lot of my Game Boy Advance games.
Yeah. It was wonderful. Game Boy Advance didn't have a great screen, and even the first iteration of SP didn't really. So it's just nice playing all those Game Boy games in full fidelity. Obviously, the disc, in hindsight, kind of ruined a lot of these games. It put a horrible filter on them. But nowadays, you can use Swiss to just get a new Game Boy player with Game Boy interface, and that's lovely. You just get this super crisp Game Boy image. Works for Game Boy Color, Game Boy, the original Game Boy. I love the Game Boy player. That's the main reason my GameCube stays hooked up, because I can play on the Wii very easily for GameCube games, but that Game Boy player, that's the main reason to keep the console around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny how absurdly expensive the Game Boy player has become. My recollection of it was that a lot of people weren't buying it, the GameCube player itself back then. The GameCube was obviously wildly unpopular in its own time. But even within that fan base, like not a lot of people ran out to buy the Game Boy player. I have one, again, wishing to, I think I have a black one. They made them in all the colors. I remember desperately wanting to find a platinum one and not being able to find it. So I, like Daniel, have just a black one attached to the bottom of my GameCube. These days, you can find the Game Boy player hardware really cheap. That disc is insanely pricey now, though.
Yeah, and you don't need it. Just make your own one.
Yeah, one thing that I found interesting was just how easily hacked the GameCube was.
It's so easy.
I remember, I remember having the broadband adapter hooked up to my PC because, and full disclosure, I was an adult, but I was not. I was not doing great at the time the GameCube came out. So sometimes, specifically, you mentioned Prince of Persia. There was an exploit that you had to use Phantasy Star Online, and then like change some DNS settings, and you could like hook the broadband adapter up to your PC and stream games back to your GameCube.
Oh wow!
And I remember doing that to play Prince of Persia, and I was so disappointed in all the effort I made to play a game I didn't like.
Oh, man. Sounds at times awesome. Hopefully one day it sticks with you.
Oh, no, I like it now. It's
okay.
just if you streamed it, so I should be clear, streaming it over that broadband adapter hack added a bunch of latency to the game.
Oh, I bet it did. Yeah.
So anytime it had to stream assets, the game would freeze.
Yeah,
and so it's like I would be playing it, and like every 5 steps, the game would just lock up for a bit and then keep going and then lock up, because you had to run like a weird PC client that like sent the data through the broadband adapter to your GameCube. Would not recommend. would not recommend that as a way to play anything.
A few minutes ago, Steve said about how wildly unpopular GameCube was in its time. And I think that is lost a lot these days, because there's a lot of celebratory videos about the GameCube. And because it's awesome, because there's so many great games. But the actual core figures are, it's sold around 20 million, which is 7 million more than the Wii U. But if you were to add Xbox and GameCube together, Xbox sold 30 million. So together is 50 million. PS2 sold 160 million. So it's like more than 3 times the competition put together, which is why almost every third party was kind of exclusive to PS2, like Metal Gear and Silent Hill and Devil May Cry and Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. It's such a different time. And I think that's why PS2 was the default for a lot of people. Like the DVD player, of course, but also because most of the games were there. But it made GameCube a really fascinating secondary console for me. Because my friend had, Melee and Mario Sunshine and Wind Waker, and they were unlike anything PS2 had. And so I yearned for these games so much that I bought an N64 at a used game store, because I was really infatuated by Zelda. I was like, I need to play this, but I can't afford a GameCube right now. And this was before the retro boom, so all retro games were dirt cheap. And I think I bought an N64 with Ocarina for like £15. And I played through that in like a weekend, and I was hooked. And that's what made me a Nintendo fan, really. Because I had a Game Boy, but that's really what got me. And then I needed to play Wind Waker, needed to play all these GameCube games that came after. And it's that quality. It's the Nintendo games. That's always been what GameCube thrives with. Because you look at the hardware, it's great, but it doesn't really compete. It's those games. It's always the games.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think is really interesting, because as children, you guys had the benefit of like not being online. And John, you recently had a great video about, how the PSP being your primary like device improved your life for a while. And that's something that I think is kind of lost in the modern era is, you guys were kids. I was online listening to people actively tell me how bad the GameCube was in that era, and having to kind of fight back against that, because sentiment among even Nintendo fans was that Nintendo was fumbling the GameCube, and to a degree, history proves that they were correct. But there were things that were objectively false back then, and even more so by today's standards, like the reaction to Wind Waker. That was there was a massive wave of backlash against the cel-shaded art style for that game.
And it's like the best looking game in hindsight of that generation. But obviously people wanted, the Ocarina follow-up. They wanted the big epic game. And that's what GameCube lacked in a lot of ways. It didn't have the big Mario 64 follow-up, really. It didn't have the Ocarina of Time follow-up, really, until Twilight Princess. But that is very much seen as a Wii game, I feel. So it lacks in those areas, but then you look at everything that it does well, and it does them incredibly well.
Yeah. We see things where we get the Space World demo with the Ocarina of Time, Link and Ganondorf fighting each other in a sword battle, and we're like, that's what we're gonna get next, right? And then we get the rug pulled on there over us, and that's part of where that distaste comes from. Like, we could have had this, but now we have this cartoony looking Link, even though it's like people still debate whether the Wii U HD remaster or this or the original GameCube one looks better. And I do think there are some aspects of the GameCube that does look better than on Wii U, even to this day.
Yeah, they both got qualities. We've got into this before, but I think the GameCube's more flat lighting works really in the favor of Wind Waker, because you just get these nice block colors, which look really good today. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those games in the line of like Mega Man Legends, Wind Waker, Dragon Quest VIII, Jet Set Radio. They're all just beautiful use of cell shade and color, and they're going to look great forever.
Yeah. These games in particular aged well. Like cell shading in its infancy looks really good. I think developers these days have gotten a bit too fancy with lighting in cell shaded games, where they really should focus on the simplicity of that, that visual style. I do remember being around, like seeing those Space World demos, particularly the Zelda one you mentioned, Daniel, and being really over the moon excited. Like I remember taking screenshots from that game and then turning them into graffiti in Jet Set Radio so I could tag things with like stills from the Zelda tech demo for the GameCube. But I remember when they revealed the look for Wind Waker, what would eventually be announced to be called Wind Waker, and I initially was quite excited by it, like just seeing a very expressive Link. Like that was what Nintendo was really focusing on in that reveal, that Link now had like very emotive facial expressions, right? That he could actually show emotions on his face. And that's what they really wanted to drive home with that. Like you saw I think it was like a Moblin, like have a huge, like cartoony reaction in that video as well. And Link like raises an eyebrow and like swings from a chandelier or something in that trailer. And people just, they didn't like it. They thought that it was way too cartoony for Zelda. I was pretty impressed from a technical perspective with what I saw back then. And I think it was the right move. Well, I mean, history has shown us that it was the right move, but it definitely was divisive, to say the least, at the time. And I think that Nintendo kind of knew something that we didn't, that history would be kind to this as opposed to just another 3D Zelda. Because I think they did kind of, especially in the case of Ocarina of Time, have an issue of how do we follow this up. Like Ocarina was considered at that point, alongside Final Fantasy VII, to be like the best game of all time.
Yeah, and then when Twilight Princess came along, a big criticism was it just felt like Ocarina again. And I think there's a lot of ways that Twilight Princess is a great game in its own right, but that was a huge criticism at the time. And so how do you move on from that? Wind Waker tried to do it differently. People didn't love it at the time. So they tried just playing it safe, and people didn't love that either. A lot of the time, people don't know what they want. This has been true in all of the industry. People will fear something, and then it comes out, and maybe there's some denial at first, but they come around on it. Because Toon Link is like the most used Link ever. Not just in the sequels, not just Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, but in Minish Cap. Four Swords Adventures uses it for the key art. Triforce Heroes uses it. Toon Link stuck around for the longest time, that style of Link. And it might be one of the most famous Links, I'd say.
Yeah,
I
pretty much
agree
right next to right now Breath of the Wild Link. That's probably the most popular Link we have of his iteration thus far.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how Nintendo has kind of leaned on stuff from the GameCube era. One thing that I feel like we haven't touched on, and I'm a bit surprised by at this point, we got to talk. Third parties weren't necessarily their best on GameCube, but this was the first generation in which Sega made games for Nintendo. And massive. That at the time was massive. Like seeing Sonic on the GameCube was surreal.
I was saying earlier, GameCube launched a year later in Europe, and so one of our launch titles was Adventure 2 Battle, which I feel like most GameCube owners had, it feels like. It didn't sell like 20 million, obviously, but whenever you talk to GameCube fans, they always seem to have played Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and I think Steve's reaching for it right now. Yeah, it is.
I've still got mine on the shelf right here, like sleeve and all. This to me, holding this in my hand was insane. Like when I got my copy and I remember just seeing Sonic on a GameCube slipcover, I was just flabbergasted. I had played through this on Dreamcast already, and I still was like, yeah, I'm going to double dip. I think this might be the first game I ever bought more than one version of, just because I was like, this is like a historical moment in gaming. And I've kept it pristine like all these years, just because I knew this was going to be something that was very special.
It's historically incredibly special. And then Sega went on to make their own exclusive Sonic trilogy on the Game Boy Advance as well. We got Skies of Arcadia Legends, Crazy Taxi. They spread themselves out, though. Like, the Xbox got a lot of exclusive brand new Sega games like Panzer Dragoon Orta and Jet Set Radio Future. But yeah, GameCube was the home of Dreamcast ports, it felt like. And it gave them a second life.
Yeah, and as a kid who lived through the like bitter war between Nintendo and Sega, it felt particularly strange. Like, I remember being on the playground as a kid, hearing people arguing about, you know, which console was better, the Genesis or the Super NES. And I mean, it was the Super NES, let's be real. But, you know, hearing those arguments and then just suddenly seeing Sega throw in the towel and start putting games on Nintendo of all things. Like, I think if, you know, with Xbox and with PlayStation, it didn't hit quite the same because that rivalry hadn't really existed to the same extent.
Yeah.
But something about seeing Sonic or PSO on the GameCube, I remember just being shocked, or playing Shenmue 2. Like you said, Shenmue 2 on the Xbox was also kind of crazy, just because we didn't even get it on the Dreamcast despite other countries getting it. So it was just wild to see that.
Yeah.
That was such
so you go ahead, Daniel.
It was such a definitive era for Sonic in particular. Like, I pretty much had only Nintendo and everything up to that point in the GameCube era, except for my Genesis, in which I had a few different Sega titles, but also Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and Knuckles, all those like with the lock-on. That was one of my favorite games to play that wasn't on a Nintendo console. And to see Sonic come over to the GameCube was very surreal. I remember the spread in the magazine of Nintendo Power, where it was like of Sonic and Mario shaking hands, and it was just a big deal at the time. And then we got games like Sonic Adventure DX, which I really also love for a lot of things that does. They finally got an original title, Sonic Heroes, during this era as well, and it just kept on going from there. Just a formative time for Sonic and Sega in general.
They did a lot to make that formative too, because my first Sonic game was on the Dreamcast, so I didn't experience the Mega Drive games originally, but then they brought Mega Collection along. It's like, well, Sega's not making consoles anymore, let's put the entire back catalogue of Sonic games on modern platforms, or almost the entire back catalogue. They did Mega Collection and then Gems Collection, and so I got to experience all these Mega Drive games, and those are some of my fondest games of like the PS2 GameCube era, even though they're Mega Drive, but Sega were very clever about establishing a legacy on other systems back then. And I think, as a whole, GameCube's third-party lineup was okay. It got a lot of the big games, but it didn't get, like, the biggest ones. It wasn't like GTA. But it did do some very big deals, though. Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil Remake, Resident Evil 4. That you can't, like, Remake and 4 are some of the greatest games of all time, and 4 especially. It went to other consoles, but it remained best on GameCube until Wii, which is basically the same version, just with a different aiming. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest games of all time, and it was a third-party GameCube game.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of really notable GameCube games. I kind of enjoyed playing some of the more, I say obscure stuff. Back then it was obscure. These days people have talked about the GameCube and monologued it to death like we're doing right now. But, you know, I enjoyed kind of some of the weirder games in the GameCube's catalog, because back then, you know, despite the internet existing, it was still kind of a common experience to just walk into a game shop and peruse the titles and find one that looked interesting based on nothing but the cover and buy that or rent it. You know, I rented a lot of games back then. One of my favorites was Chibi Robo. I bought this game just based on the cover art, and I was like, it looks interesting enough. And it was the most off the wall, weird ass Nintendo game I've played probably in my life, just about these tiny little robot battlers that you can customize, but somehow the scapes encompass like the destruction of the earth. And so I remember playing through it and being like, this is absolutely nuts. But the core gameplay mechanics were just so good that I could not put that game down for the longest time. I think I replayed it like 5 or 6 times.
It's very, very good. If anyone gets the chance, Captain Rainbow by the same studio has some Chibi Robo in there, and it's also just incredibly good and about as wacky as Nintendo games get. They're
Captain
both
Rainbow has some stuff in it.
It's got some stuff in it. It's got some. Be warned, there is some stuff.
Yeah. Oh man.
But yeah. What a great studio.
I love the things that they had done in that era. Talking about what Capcom did as well. I love the Beautiful Joe games as well. Those were some of my favorite looking ones too. So dynamic. Kind of borrow that cel shaded style that would carry on for some of my favorite art styles in games, like with Wind Waker, and just all the weird stuff that it did. This was my introduction to Final Fantasy. I think Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was probably one of my first Final Fantasy games that I'd ever played.
That's very funny.
And it gave me a strange first impression for the rest of the series after that, because I remember I would play, when I finally got a PS2, I played like Final Fantasy 7 and whatnot. But starting off with Crystal Chronicles was odd because I also happened to have enough friends with Game Boys and link cables to actually play it the real intended way. And so another one of my favorite aspects of the GameCube is that link connection, where you have your own little personal screen on your handheld, but also the main home screen on the television. And playing that with a group of friends from start to finish is just such a magical thing. That and Four Swords Adventures, doing that, both of those titles with the interesting ideas they had with using that second screen. Can't really replicate that even to this day in quite the same way. It
was better asymmetric play than the Wii U in a lot of ways. Pac-Man Versus was one of the best multiplayer games on the system. And do you know that meme where it's like the IGN crew looking all disappointed and then cheering? They're cheering for Twilight Princess. They're disappointed for Pac-Man Versus. What's wrong with them?
Can't believe
one of the best games on the console.
It's such a funny thing because those asymmetric multiplayer games were the reason I ended up getting an SP. Because I played it in my room, and the room in my mom's house at the time didn't have overhead lighting. So I couldn't see my friggin' Game Boy. So I ended up going to GameStop and trading in my launch model GBA to get an SP so I could see GameCube games better on it. And I remember at one point I owned 2 link cables and my brother also had an SP. So he would just come to my room and we would play, Pac-Man Versus. We would play, I would raise Chow on Sonic Adventure with that thing. There was even some GBA link cable stuff, I think in PSO at one point.
There was. One of the best uses is Nintendo Puzzle Collection. Daniel knows. He's nodding his little eyelids there. So in Nintendo Puzzle Collection, Japan exclusive, you can plug in your Game Boy Advance and put in, you can store in the RAM small versions of all the puzzle games. So there's the Pound Upon, there's Dr. Mario, and there's also Yoshi's Cookie. So you basically download it to your Game Boy Advance, unplug it, untether it from the GameCube, and it lasts as long as your battery lasts. So you can go out and play all these puzzle games with nothing in the cartridge slot, and it is the coolest thing.
So cool. Yeah, that's just a unique, just a crazy unique ideas that I don't see done anywhere else. That I think only that just GameCube and the link connection between GameCube and Game Boy Advance could have done with that technology. Oh man.
Yeah. Also, big shout out to having 4 controller ports. PS2 didn't. You had to have a multi-tap. And I think because of that, there weren't that many really iconic 4-player PS2 games. GameCube's full of them. Melee, Mario Party, Mario Kart. I said earlier that Time Splitters I'd rather play on PS2, but it's convenient to play 4-player on GameCube.
Yeah, it's interesting that they continued that from the N64. I remember as a kid being really happy that I could have more than one friend over to play N64 with me. I was really thrilled that they continued that with the GameCube. But realistically, I don't think, and I think this might be the difference because, as you shift into adulthood, your your friend circle tends to narrow, right?
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, like random kids from my school would just show up to play N64 at my house. As an adult, I was like, I don't want you weird people showing up at my house. Just leave me alone. So I would generally play with my brother and sister. So I think the most I ever had was like 3 players. Because when the GameCube launched, like I was briefly back home for a while, and my brother and sister were at the same time. So we spent a lot of time playing GameCube, and weirdly, I got because I was very anti-Sony at the time, I got a GameCube and a PS2 in the same year. Because I blamed Sony for the failure of the Dreamcast, so I boycotted it for a while. And
understandable.
And eventually, though, like 160 million other people, I asked my mom eventually. I was like, "Hey, I want a PS2 now. Can you and Dad get me a PS2?" And so I got the GameCube for myself, and then 3 months later, I got the PS2, and I ended up using the GameCube as like my multiplayer machine of choice, strictly because I could play with more than one other person.
Yeah. It's interesting how when you compare PS2 and GameCube, because PS2's got a lot more variety, and it can be more powerful in cases. Like GameCube probably couldn't have done Silent Hill 2 and MGS3 because of the fill rate thing that PS2 has. But then there's a bunch of multiplats that just perform a lot better on GameCube. Like, for instance, Sonic Heroes, which Daniel mentioned earlier. That's 60 FPS on GameCube and 30 FPS on PS2. And one game that's plagued by the PS2 is Tales of Symphonia. 60 FPS on GameCube. They lost the source code.
Goodness.
Now they're stuck with PS2's 30 FPS source code.
I can't escape this game no matter where I go, can I? I only got a multi-tap for one specific game for PS2, and that was Tales of the Abyss. A lot of my friends wanted to play that multiplayer because pretty much all the Tales games up to that point were multiplayer. You could play multiplayer on GameCube just easily with 4 people. But yeah, that one performs. One of the things is that the coding was so specific that they couldn't replicate that for PS2 to make it function in the same way. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of games that are plagued by that, like with Sonic Heroes, for example, and even Resident Evil, some of the performance couldn't match up to the GameCube's optimization.
Resident Evil 4 was hugely downgraded. And then they ported the PS2 version to PC, which was even worse originally. It was only when the Wii came along that we got a functional Resident Evil 4 again.
And we still have a dysfunctional Tales of Symphonia because of all of that back then. Unfortunately. Oh man, that got me into so many JRPGs. That was like my gateway for a lot of JRPGs. Like I played turn-based battles before with games like Paper Mario, but that was like the first proper introduction to that in general, and it's always been such an important title for me that I don't think I would have ever gotten to Tales if it hadn't been for that game in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting how the GameCube in particular, I think, served as like a gateway for a lot of people into, I mean, broadly speaking, like for your generation, which sounds, again, makes me feel incredibly old, into your love of gaming in general. For me, that was the N64. Like, I think I really became a diehard Nintendo guy in the N64 era. But I feel like the GameCube occupies this kind of special place. Like it is one of Nintendo's least popular consoles from a sales perspective, but I think it enjoys a space in history now, in modern history, that few consoles ever get to. Like, I don't think you could find somebody who thinks the GameCube was terrible in this day and age. Like, I think the general sentiment about the console has really changed over the last 20 plus years.
100%. Yeah. I mean, personally speaking, I think PS2's library is unrivaled among almost all consoles. It's just so packed full of games. So I lean towards PS2, but I don't feel like that's that common in Nintendo circles, though. When you speak to the broader, gaming landscape, I think it probably is, but in the Nintendo circle, GameCube comes out on top so often that it almost feels like it's more popular than PS2, even though it clearly isn't.
I 100% agree with you in both respects. I was fortunate enough, like I said earlier, that I had both at the same time. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I wouldn't have been able to do that without you. But I felt like the GameCube was the perfect companion console. Like
Yes.
I would play the big zeitgeist games on PS2 because that's where they were. And then I would play the smaller kind of almost niche experiences on the GameCube, right? Like obviously you had your big Nintendo games and there was only one way to play those. That goes without saying. But I would often pick up like just kind of smaller, wackier games to play on the GameCube. It was almost like I had my serious big boy console and then I had my little fun one.
Yeah. That's also why I love the Wii so much. 'Cause the Wii is just another GameCube. But it couldn't afford all the multiplats. Like GameCube got some multi-platforms, we just couldn't really have them. So it was all just weird little wacky stuff. A lot of bad things on there, but also a lot of fun things. And GameCube was basically that, even though it's shared a lot with the other consoles as well. And that's why I love it so much. It's not hands down the best of all the systems there, but it's got the personality that really drives it. And I like the original Xbox. I think that's got a bunch of really great games as well, but I don't think of it in the same thought as GameCube.
Yeah. GameCube is definitely isn't not like the most popular or won't ever be the most popular console, but it didn't need to be. Like, we had a lot of games in there that we remember fondly. I'm always thinking about what title I'll talk about next on a video on this channel because I've done a whole bunch throughout the last year at this point because I love the console. I love talking about the ones that are on there. And the games that people probably won't even talk about as often, like F-Zero GX, I kind of prefer Metroid Prime 2 over Prime 1, kind of prefer Pikmin 2 over Pikmin 1, just weird that way. But, everyone has different tastes when it comes to GameCube titles.
Yeah. I think also the limited library was to a benefit in many ways. I think Steve was saying earlier that a lot of these games were quite formative for people. And it's kind of because they had to be. Like on PS2, you think about RPGs and you think of this whole list of them. On GameCube, it's like Skies of Arcadia Legends, Tales of Symphonia, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, and you start to go, which is
Kaitos.
Yep.
Baden Kaito, yeah. You throw a few more ones out there, but you're kind of guided towards a few of them, and they're fantastic ones. So most people end up playing these really great RPGs, mostly out of lack of choice, but it's a good thing in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
The GameCube's library, like you said, John, it was small, and it feels like because of that, there's this tighter knit community around it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody had a PS2, and because of the just incredible selection of games on that console, everybody had a different experience with it. Whereas with the GameCube, we were all kind of in this struggle together to support this console. And so we all the community exists around, just kind of this core group of games. And in a weird way that makes it cozier. Like you have this, everybody who had a GameCube and played it throughout its lifespan, or those who, have come into it and really gotten into the scene, you can call out like some fan favorite games, and most people will have played those. And I think that's kind of neat to have that shared experience among a large group, because, we talk about the GameCube as like didn't really do very well, but 20 million people had this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that, I wanted to ask real quick, given the kind of experiences we have with the GameCube, do y'all have a favorite license title on the GameCube?
Oh, that's a great question, man.
I
played a lot of rubbish in that era, a lot of stuff that just wasn't good.
Yeah, this is tough for me, because at the time, licensed games did not have a great reputation. So, and again, I was an adult spending what little money I had. Like I was just a baby adult, right? And so I was broke. And if I bought a game, I had to know it was going to be something I liked. But I will say this: I played Shrek on the GameCube, and this was an interesting one for me because, and this is something maybe only people as old as me remember, but Shrek on the Xbox got a lot of shine for looking as good as it did. Like people were like, "Oh man, Shrek looks amazing on the Xbox." So what did I do? I went out and bought the GameCube version. And I remember playing it and thinking the game sucked, but you could find a perfectly modeled GameCube inside the game. Like you could end up inside a GameCube.
Well, now I've got to get it.
And you could run around inside an actual GameCube as Shrek. And I remember thinking, that's rad.
Wow.
Yeah, that is cool.
That's awesome.
You know, I do have an answer for this, actually. I think the Simpsons games, apart from skateboarding, were all fantastic in this era.
Yeah.
Road Rage and Hit and Run especially. Hit and Run was a very formative game for me, actually. I loved it a lot. Played it to death. I was a big Simpsons fan, and it hit in the era where the Simpsons writing was still very strong. And so it felt like just a really well-written episode of the show. But then you've got GTA gameplay. And in many ways, it was GameCube's only Grand Theft Auto, and it was a good one.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. For me, that was a PS2 game, but
I played on PS2 as well, but it was also on GameCube.
Oh man, I the one that I had in mind that I would bring up, it's a completely random title, but it is the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction for GameCube. Actually,
the first Donkey Kong Bonanza game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, as I was playing Bonanza, I was like, this kind of reminds me of, you know, a way more fleshed out Incredible Hulk, because you could just smash pretty much anything in that game. You would have a skill tree that kind of built out the kind of abilities you would use. My favorite one was you would take a bus and smash it into like a surfboard, and you would just slide, and it didn't follow physics at all. You could like slide uphill, and you would still go along the way. It was just a lot of dumb fun, but no, that was like. Yeah, like pre-Bonanza style of like just an open area. We could just smash it up anything in the area, and it was just a lot of dumb fun.
Oh, and do Spider-Man 2, incredible. I played every Spider-Man game that came out. I played the first movie game. I played the PS1 games, and Spider-Man 2 was next level. Everything Insomniac's games do now, they owe almost everything to what Treyarch did with Spider-Man 2. Open world swinging, the physics, the momentum. It was all really great. When you look back in retrospect, the combat isn't fantastic, but just swinging around New York was so cool and so well done.
Wasn't Spider-Man 2 the famous "I'm Gonna Die" game?
That's Spider-Man 3.
Okay.
Not quite as good.
Yeah, those Treyarch games back in the day did get a lot of credit for what they did with Spider-Man, and I think that. Like you said, you know, people think about Insomniac as like the Spider-Man game developer at this point, but they really did build off of what Treyarch did with the early series, which is funny because I think before that they were the Tony Hawk guys.
I think so. Is that what Treyarch were doing? Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah, I think so.
Just Googling this real quick.
Those guys were rolling out bangers back then. Like Tony Hawk was also incredibly well received, and we had that on GameCube too. I think the GameCube was just this incredible little system that didn't get enough love back in the day, but I'm happy to see the community has picked up and run with since then. Like it's remembered much more fondly than it was in its time, and I'm happy to see that as somebody who had one of these and unfortunately painted it silver.
Just a quick fact check. They co-developed Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, but Neversoft were the core developers. But Treyarch, they were involved.
Oh, that's right. I remember, but I do remember playing quite a few Treyarch Spider-Man games. I remember playing Spider-Man, I think on the N64. I think they had an N64 Spider-Man game, which
they did.
It was.
There was also there was a sequel, Enter Electro. I remember that as well. Yeah, I don't know if they hold up, but Spider-Man 2 does. I played that not that long ago.
Yeah. Spider-Man 2 on the GameCube /PS2 was excellent, but we've been going on for a while. I think we could probably fill another hour with our memories of the GameCube. Obviously, we've spent years and years with it, but I want to go around before we close out and just off the top of your head, I'm going to start with you, Daniel. What is your favorite GameCube game?
I will definitely shuffle this around my head a lot of the time, but as of right now, I'm thinking I love the first iteration of a 3D Fire Emblem title, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. So many people hold this as one of their favorites, as a reason why it is absurdly expensive to find out there in the wild. There's something about the way that this story was told, because it was such a different take. Like, the typical formula for Fire Emblem is that you're a lord or some kind of noble, your home is taken from you or something like that. You have to fight to claim your homeland back. The main character, he's just a guy. He's just a mercenary out in the boonies trying to make a living, and he just kind of gets wrapped up in a whole bunch of things. There's so many different takes on the story that kind of subverts your usual expectations. Like, you essentially save the princess in chapter 4, and the whole goal is to take her back home instead, and you get wrapped up in a whole bunch of crazy things with the lore from there. Just so many cool things that it does. The story, the narrative is great. The way it leads into Radiant Dawn, if you play the sequel, just a complete, well done duology. But yeah, that's probably one of my favorites. I would say 1,000 Year Door as well, which is a very close second. But that's as far as like one that I only can play right now, go back to the GameCube to play that, I would say Path of Radiance.
Okay, how about you, John?
Growing up, I think I would have told you Wind Waker, no question. I still love Wind Waker, but Resident Evil 4 is the clear answer for me. I think it's just perfection. I can play that game any day. Doesn't matter the mood, and I will be in a better mood after I play it. And the core adventure's fantastic, but it's the mercenaries that kept me coming back. It just felt like infinite replay value. I could just play it forever, try and max my scores out. And it really solidified what third-person shooting was, but the pacing of it is just remarkable. The remake is good. It stands alongside it. It's a great game, but it doesn't supplant or surpass the original in my eyes.
Nice. For me, I have two different answers to this question. In terms of the most impressive GameCube game, I'm talking about like wow factor here for me. I would have to actually go with Star Fox Adventures.
That fur.
The fur was insane. Yeah. And I remember playing that game, and it was all right. It scratched the non-existent Zelda itch at the time. It to me, it shared some DNA with what at that point I identified as Zelda.
Yeah.
But I remember the point at which I really was kind of blown away. Like, the visuals impressed me a lot. But when you got to fight Andross and you got in your R-Wing and just went up into space and then had that battle, and granted, by modern standards, incredibly basic stuff. But by early 2000s standards, I was like, whoa, there's like a whole different kind of game in this game. And we're seeing some of that with, it's a very similar swerve to what we got early on in Age of Imprisonment, right? Like, if you know, you know. So to me, that was just a wildly impressive technical showcase for the GameCube. And I remember thinking, like, this is what next gen is. Like, this is really cool. My favorite game, however, like the game I love the most out of the GameCube library, and this, if you know me, this is going to come as very little surprise, just PSO episode 1 and 2 plus. I spent, no joke, probably about 1,500 hours in this game on the GameCube. It became my way of like hanging out with my online friends. Like, we would just get on the GameCube and play this game together and chat. And I spent, loads of time with these people. Like, I made actual friends that I still have 20 plus years later that I met on my GameCube in that game. So to me, that's just, I can't think of another experience that I enjoyed more than that on the GameCube. I think there are objectively better games, but that one is my favorite.
It's interesting too, because there's a few games that use the LAN adapter for, LAN play, like Kirby Air Ride and Mario Kart Double Dash. But Phantasy Star's like the only online game.
Yeah, we had Phantasy Star Online 1 and 2, and then episode 3, which was just, for some reason, they're like, you know what? We should follow this action RPG up with a card game.
Yeah.
Which made no sense. Yeah, but those were like the only games that actually played online. I was trying to, part of me wanted to say, Choo Choo Rocket didn't come to GameCube, did it? It came to GBA.
No. Yeah, GBA.
What a
you're
crime.
Right. Yeah, GBA got like a little Jet Set Radio as well. I need to play that someday. I don't know how it plays.
It's not good.
Okay.
It's not good. You're not missing a whole lot. But anyway, I think that's we've talked a lot about the GameCube. Lovely system. If you've never played the GameCube library, find a way to, or at least check out the ones that we have on NSO now. It is. I think it informed a lot of the current generation's love of Nintendo. And it's easy to see why, like, so much of what we have in the Switch 2 era has roots all the way back in the GameCube. And I think that's it's something really special. And it's interesting to hear from the two of you who obviously were much younger when this console came out. Like Daniel, I can envision like a 13-year-old Daniel playing Kirby Air Ride, and I'm like, that your love for Air Riders makes a lot more sense in that context.
Spent way too much time on that game.
It's also the era where just visuals became good enough. The performance is good, the visuals look nice. You can go back to them now and have a great time with it. Like it doesn't take long to fall back into that era.
It's interesting you say that, because I was playing Yakuza Kiwami, which we talked about at the top of the show last night, and you can tell that the visuals are dated by a bit. But when you're looking at it, you're like, you're not repulsed by these graphics. Like I can't remember the last time I saw them and I was like, oh my God. These games, like we really did enter the era of good enough graphics like 20 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think I told myself for the first time that when I played F-Zero GX, like when you're playing that game, it looks amazing. It sounds amazing. The soundtrack is incredible for a game that came out in 2003. The cutscenes, you can kind of see the motion capture jank of people emoting like crazy during those, but visually they look really cool. They have that charm in that way, and that's really when I told myself like I don't really need games to be more like powerful or the higher fidelity than this. Honestly, if they all look like this or they have a kind of baseline here, I'd be totally fine with that.
Especially at GX speed. At that point, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It really these days it's the animations in games that give away how old they are more than anything else. Like Daniel said, when you see someone like wildly gesticulating in a corner, you're like, oh, this is a 2000s game. Like we really did. And it's funny to say though, one of the things we didn't even mention is we really went from the era of like triangle hands to like fully formed digits. Like I remember seeing Luigi grab a doorknob for the first time on the GameCube and thinking like, whoa, this is crazy. Like Mario just had kind of a ball for a hand one console ago. And now you've got this almost Disney quality, gloved hand opening this door.
Yeah, I remember when people went crazy when the Mario Brothers had denim in Melee, like the textures of these characters, like, whoa, blew my mind.
Oh, I remember rotating the trophies in Melee so much and just kind of marveling at the detail in all the models. Yeah, it was certainly, these days we look at stuff like, the vellus hairs on Aloy's face in Horizon, but this was our version of that back then. Like just seeing that Mario had realistically textured overalls.
Yes. Seeing the fluff in the grass in Star Fox Adventures, the fluff on DK and Jungle Beat, like it's still impressive. It still looks good. And there's some games that are just good enough, but other ones like they still impress today.
Yeah. The GameCube really should not be underestimated. We're in an era now where people nitpick over, a 59 FPS drop over a 60 game. But back then, this was something where just seeing this level of visual fidelity is something that we hadn't previously encountered before. And it was certainly, not every GameCube game was perfect, obviously, but what we got was something really special.
A lot more of it is 60 FPS than the following generation. Very few 360 and PS3 games are. A lot of GameCube and PS2 ones are there.
Yeah.
Very true. Developers started pushing the envelope a lot more in the years that would follow. But any closing thoughts on the GameCube from the two of you?
Let Daniel take it.
Closing thoughts, huh? Man, yeah. It feels weird that this year, like in this era, it feels like a resurgence of a lot of GameCube love. I made a funny point earlier this year where this year we got a new Mario Kart title, a new F-Zero title, and Kirby Air Ride all in 1 year. And same thing happened in 2003. We got F-Zero GX, Mario Kart Double Dash, and Kirby Air Ride in the same year. It's just a weird time right now, and we're getting another Metroid Prime in just a few weeks now. And the Switch really is like, for the longest time, we didn't really need to have like that NSO, because there were a lot of titles that were just coming from the GameCube to this era. There was Sales of Symphonia, Paper Mario, The 1,000-Year Door, amongst other games as well. Even like Final Fantasy,
Resident Evils, yeah.
Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered, which is vastly inferior to the original, but that just speaks to the GameCube era. Like, you can't really replicate those kind of experiences on the GameCube anywhere else in some cases, and it's why I hope if we ever get Four Swords Adventures, I have no idea how they're going to do it, because there's only a very specific way to kind of have that experience, especially with friends inside. And I have a lot of cherished memories with friends, just in the same room with me with the GameCube. I think that's where a lot of those memories end. Like, sure, I had some with Wii and the Wii U, but my favorite ones are always going to be with the GameCube.
They're going to sell us NSO Game Boy Advance controllers that you've got to plug into your Switch.
Well, if we're getting virtual console headsets, I'm actually not against believing that, honestly.
It's very possible at this point, yeah.
I would unironically buy that. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
You can sell me that, Nintendo. I'll
take 4, yeah.
Yeah, I'll take 4. You know, just let me plug my existing link cable and my existing SP into my Switch somehow. Just make it.
At the adapter, just let me do it. Yeah,
exactly. You could do this. I've got like a GameCube to USB adapter. We can work it out. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week in Nintendo. Thank you both, Jon and Daniel, for joining me. We basically spent this week in 2003, and what better way to live in 2025 than just bringing back a little bit of 2003. Maybe things were simpler back then. Maybe they were better. But that's going to do it for us. If you'd like to see each episode of The Week in Nintendo just that little bit early, not 2003 early, but a day early, you can head over to patreon.com/gvgaming to find out how. I hope you all are having a great week. I hope you're happy, safe, and healthy wherever you are, and we'll see you right back here next week for The Week in Nintendo. Bye now.
We meet again.